Hello again. It's 8 o'clock Eastern, and it's time to celebrate your great work and take a look back at last week's experiences so we can get ready for the week ahead. I'm Lopeke, founder of SMARTSTART, and you're watching Sunday Night Wind Down. Thank you for joining me for another live stream tonight. I'm so happy to be here with you again. First, I'm raising a toast to all of you and to myself too. So here's to lying, cheating, stealing, and drinking. If you're going to lie, lie to save the life of a friend. And if you are going to cheat, cheat death. And if you're going to steal, steal hearts. If you're going to drink with me, then what we're going to be doing is celebrating our hard work and making things that matter, and then being brave enough to put them on the internet. And we're also going to celebrate another wonderful week in the crazy world of entrepreneurship. There's a lot that I'd like to talk to you about tonight, including my big lie, the need for speed, and more of the start, stop, continue retrospective that I introduced last week, and working with gold medal Olympians, and then we'll see what else comes to mind. But by the way, tonight I am drinking one of my favorite reds. It's by J. Lore 7 Oaks, Cabernet Sauvignon, and I really love it. But I don't enjoy my wine until we're finished, so just set it aside. And you, of course, are welcome to drink right along through the entire live stream, and it doesn't have to be wine. It can be anything that you like. Last week was the first live stream in this series, and it was so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing that special moment with me. There's been a lot of good feedback, and I really appreciate that. I was surprised by the number of views, and I was very grateful to Phil for chiming in and letting me know that he wanted to have whatever I was having. It's just such a wonderful aspect of some of the work that we do, to be able to connect with our communities online like this, all for free at the push of a button. I really do find it amazing. Now, to get to there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about in relation to last week. One was the crazy things that were happening in the feed while I was talking. I could not see those things, which is probably a good thing. I didn't know they had happened actually until I saw what Facebook had uploaded. So I investigated that to see what caused my imitation Martian look there. And it had something to do with upload speed. So I found out that there's a wonderful tool called NetSpeed. It's at NetSpeed or netspeed.net. And there's another site, speedtest.net as well. And on these sites, it will test your upload and download speed and give you a reading. Upload speed is the important number to look at for Facebook live stream. And the minimum you want is 3 to 4 megabytes per second. So I did test that tonight, and I'm well above that. So I'm going to be quite surprised if we have problems, but if not, I have another plan that I will look into for the next time. And eventually we're going to get a clean feed out of this thing. But I wanted to talk a bit about first the big lie that I told last week. I was looking at the tape, or the video, I suppose, of the live stream, and I heard myself say that I didn't really know why I was afraid of doing the live stream. And that is the big lie, because I really did know maybe in that moment when I said that, I thought I didn't know. I pushed it to the back of my mind, but I really did know. And one of the big reasons that it took me a long time to get up the courage to do a live stream was not so much the speaking to all of you. I have plenty of experience with that, as I had mentioned. But many of you have never seen me in person, and I have a very unusual appearance, which you may notice on the live stream. But the reason that I have that unusual appearance is I was born with Klippel-Feil syndrome, and Klippel-Feil syndrome is a very rare skeletal condition that affects the upper spine. And essentially, when you're looking at me directly, you would notice something different. It might take you some time to figure out just what it is. But because of the Klippel-Feil syndrome, many of my movements appear very unnatural. I don't think about it too much anymore. I mean, obviously, I've lived with it all my life, and it has created some very interesting situations for me along the way, shall we say. But I was nervous about people that I don't know seeing me because even after all these years, and you would think people are more enlightened now, but they're not, whenever I go out in public, I have to face a lot of open mocking and ridicule. And I have even been approached by strangers who have expressed anger for me for being out walking around, and you know, they find me offensive or whatever it is. And of course, now I don't think about it too much for myself, but when you're on video, it's a little bit hard to ignore. And I did not realize just how much the unnatural movements had increased since an accident that I was in back a few years now. Now, a few years ago, I was in a major motor vehicle accident where I left with catastrophic brain and spinal cord injuries. And the interesting thing about the accident itself is, as a direct result of having had Klippel-Feil syndrome all my life, my trapezius muscles are extremely thick. Yeah, sort of the size of if you had a bodybuilder who had particularly developed that muscle. And the reason they were extra thick was because all these years, so we're talking over 6 decades now, they have been the sole support of my head, and that would be how I would control my movement prior to the accident. In the accident, though, I was decapitated, not internally decapitated. And the reason it was not the total decapitation was because the seatbelt was only able to cut through my chin and not through that extra heavy muscle. So all those years that I hated having Klippel-Feil syndrome and hated having giant trapezius muscles, they in fact saved my life in that particular accident. Now, the other aspect of the accident, which I had to overcome in order to be able to speak to you in the first place, was the catastrophic brain injury. That injury took away my ability to read, write, think, process anything. And it was many, many years of rehab to recover those skills. I still struggle with that from time to time, because my brain doesn't function the same way that it used to prior to the catastrophic injury. And if you think of it like a smartphone, when it starts to run out of power, which is fairly quickly actually, then certain functions just don't connect, and they don't appear very natural. And that's very humiliating at times, but I've done everything that I can over these past years to mitigate that damage and to re-engineer how my brain functions to the best of my ability. what can happen in the course of speaking to you is that it will just stop processing, and then I won't be able to find my words, or I won't be able to see. I did have a period of blindness during the last live stream, but my speech was not affected, which was great because the audio came through just fine. But I worried about that, and I wondered how it would be if I was speaking and then all of a sudden one of these things happened. And I don't control, of course, how long it takes to come back online, if you want to look at it that way. So that was pretty nerve-wracking for me. And at the same time, though, many of the members of my SmartStart community who have been with me for 15 years, they're all aware, or most of them are aware of the accident and how it impacted my life. So it would be less disconcerting for them. But for many of you watching the live stream who aren't in SmartStart or have never met me, don't know anything about me, it would be, just something way out of the ordinary that would be difficult to understand without knowing what in fact was going on. Now, speaking of my SmartStart community, I mentioned last week how proud I am of them all, and they were very wonderful to me for the many years that I was in rehab. And that's when you really start to reap the benefits of the investment that you've made in other people's lives. After my life was so rudely interrupted, the several members of my community did all kinds of amazing things to help me along and to encourage me. And without their support, I'm not so certain that I could have made all the progress that I was able to make. Hi, Jane. Jane has joined the live stream tonight, again this week. Thank you for joining us. We have quite a few SmartStart members who have stayed in touch even though my work with them has been completed. And they were tremendously encouraging. And it always seemed to be that during rehab, on the days when I would come home and I would just think there was no way I could continue with the work or deal with the pain or the aggravation of all my injuries, that's when invariably a card would arrive or an email would arrive, and some kind words would come from someone in my community that would reinvigorate my determination to not be bested by these injuries. In any event, it's been a long, long road. There's still a long way to go, but I'm doing the best I can. And when I listened to the live stream from last week, I thought, that was pretty amazing. I had the doctor listen to it because, of course, he's been with me all these years from right after the injury where I could not speak or could not comprehend conversation. And he has been instrumental, of course, in helping me rewire my brain so that I could overcome the many cognitive impairments that were imposed as a result of the accident. And so he wanted me to send a special hello to all of you out there as well. He's quite amazed at the progress that we've been able to make. It's been a long, hard journey. But the reason I wanted to talk to you about it tonight is, in my experience, and I'm often telling this to my SmartStart members and my clients, that when things happen to you, instead of asking, why me? Why did this happen? You should be asking questions that are opposite to that, like, why not? Why not me? I would never choose to have had a catastrophic brain injury myself, but the universe in its wisdom gives you whatever it is that's best for you. And in my experience, the worse it seems at the time, the better it actually turns out to be in the long run. And there were many magical experiences that I've had on the rehab journey that could never have been experienced in any other way. For example, I remember the moment when I realized I could not write. Not just because I didn't know words and I couldn't make sentences, but because I didn't have the use of my hands. I could not control the pen. I did not know letters. And it was a shock the day that I realized that. But my second thought that came immediately on the heels of that was, oh wow, here I am, a fully formed adult, and I'm going to go and experience the process that our children go through when they learn cursive writing. And all along the way, I thought, as I'm going through these different experiences and breaking down processes and rewiring my brain to accomplish things in different ways and adapt to a number of circumstances that otherwise I would never have had to deal with, I just believed that there would be something in there that would be tremendously useful to bring an edge to Smart Start that otherwise would not have existed and could not have existed because I would not have had the information that then became available to me on this journey. So yes, there was a few years there where I had to do 18 different rehabs to get as far as I have. And there were days when it seemed as if zero progress was being made, and that was very discouraging. That is not unlike when a new entrepreneur is working on their business and they try this type of marketing or that type of marketing, or they create this product or that program and try to sell it, and yet they don't seem to get the feedback or the response that they want, and they conclude that they are not making progress. And that is simply not true. Sometimes progress is incremental, and sometimes the progress you make is not visible in the effects that you want it to be visible in, but there are still improvements being made along the way. That was one aspect that came back to the work that made it even more an exciting program than it already was before this happened to me. And I just thought that somehow, some way, all of the different experiences that I had would be able to be incorporated in ways that would make even greater success stories for our members. And that is in fact what has happened and what will continue over the next few years, hopefully, or forever, as long as I continue to live, which God only knows how long that will be. In any event, I knew that those two reasons, my concerns over having to put a public face to myself after such a severe injury, was the real reason behind the fear I had over doing a live stream. And after I got the first one done, I was on such an incredible high afterwards. In fact, I only remember experiencing a high that big one other time in my life, and that was in 2007 when I met President Clinton, and there was something I wanted to pitch to him. And that was a really exciting moment, not just because of who he was, but I'm always telling my clients that when the pressure is on, and that was a very high pressure situation, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your highest level of preparation. Now, I had prepared quite a bit for that meeting, but the one thing that I did not factor into any rehearsal that I'd had up to the point of actually meeting President Clinton was I didn't even think about the Secret Service agents. And of course, he was surrounded by Secret Service agents, and their number one job was to prevent people like me from approaching him and pitching him and stuff. So I had prepared all kinds of fabulous collateral, print collateral to give to him. But then before I actually got to step up and speak with him, everything that we had on us was removed. And And so I didn't have anything with me, and all of a sudden I had to give that pitch right from memory. And I had to do it without getting arrested. That was the real challenge there. So when it was over and I did not get arrested, and I had a great time speaking to him, and there is a lovely picture of us meeting and having that conversation on the internet. I was on a super high, and I had that exact same high after last week's live stream. Now, at that point, when I left meeting the president, I did not even care what the outcome was going to be, and that's what I tell our clients and members too. When you're doing something really challenging, you have to detach from the outcome, because the success is not in the outcome. The success is invested in the fact that you were terrified and you actually went ahead and did it anyway. So when I left the building, I was on this really huge high. It lasted for a couple of days. But then 2 or 3 days after meeting him, he called to follow up. So what I had said had obviously made an impression. I never, ever expected to hear back from him. So then the high started all over again. I'm kind of hoping when I look at tonight's live stream, I will feel just as great as I did last week. I don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. What I do know is when you're preparing for something like this, I had mentioned this idea of doing the start, stop, continue exercise. That is a very important aspect of every business project that you undertake or every business initiative that you implement. And the start, stop, continue retrospective will help you continuously improve whatever it is you're doing. So if I applied the start, stop, continue retrospective to last week's live stream, I can tell you that this week I decided to stop with the lip gloss. Lip gloss makes your lips really sticky, and it's uncomfortable. I loved the color, but lip gloss is not the right product to use for a live stream for me. And the other thing I learned, of course, is never touch your hair with a comb, especially a plastic comb in a dry room just before you're going live. It's a bad idea. In terms of starting things, I learned to start checking with speedtest.net to make sure that the upload speed was going to be suitable for the live stream. And I decided to start testing a few other tools. There are a few other tools out there that can help you improve your live stream delivery, and I want to test some of those, so I started investigating that as well. And in terms of things that I'm going to continue, I want to continue involving as many people from our community and from our client base as I can, and tell their stories, because these are the people who kind of drove me to overcome the challenges that I had to overcome, simply because I knew my work with SmartStart was not finished just because of the accident. It was just one of those things where I was going to have to approach the work a lot differently. And I used to pray to God actually every day. You take on like one step at a time, and you have to push and get all the way to the end through rehabs. And I used to pray for just being able to recover sufficiently to be able to return to independent living. So to put it into perspective for you, that took a little over 5 years to achieve, and it was very difficult. Every day of those 5 years was hard. Every day of the current year is difficult too, but for different reasons. And then that was one goal that I had. Another goal that I had was I wanted to be able to rewire my brain sufficiently to have access to everything that I knew, that I had learned at the time of the accident. And I have always worked very hard in my different careers to acquire a lot of knowledge about things. And for 50 years now, I've had a commitment where I actually study the things that I'm working with clients and whatnot, 10 to 15 hours a week of study. So after 50 years, that's a significant amount of learning and keeping on top of things. So it seemed like this huge waste that I couldn't access it anymore. And to put that into perspective for you, I had written, I think my 103rd book came out just before the accident, about 9 or 10 days before the accident. And when I had regained consciousness and was back at home, I couldn't understand a word in that book. The only thing I knew was that I had written the book. I knew it was my picture on the cover, but I could not have explained anything at all in that book to you. So another goal was that I had to be able to read my own work and understand it again and be able to defend it. So that was a book on pricing, pricing algorithms and pricing formulas, and the importance of understanding your margins and all kinds of things relating to pricing that business owners really do need to master. And it took 8 years for me to be able to understand that book again, actually. So that was another big moment. And then, of course, when I read it 8 years after that and I understood it again, the first thing that I realized was that I needed to update it. So last year, that's what I did. That was one of the projects that I did. And I was very happy to be able to do that. At the time of the accident, I spoke 5 languages and 10 computer languages. I only relearned English. Maybe someday I will tackle my lost languages. I don't know. I haven't made a decision about that yet. It's interesting what aspects remained doable. Even though I could not carry on a conversation because I couldn't understand it, I still remembered how to spell and I still remembered how to type. So I couldn't write, I couldn't read, I couldn't really listen to people. I couldn't see half the time, but I remembered how to type. So if I could recall a word, if someone was talking to me, I knew they were speaking to me because their lips were moving, but didn't know what they were saying. I would sometimes recall words, and as I got a little bit further along in rehab, I would type in the word, go to Google, find out what it meant, or what the definition was, and I tried to piece together the statements that people were making or the questions they were asking, and tried to formulate responses to that. That was a lot of hard work too. But I am grateful that I remembered how to spell, because if I couldn't have remembered that, I think I would have been quite lost. And I had a fairly significant vocabulary at the time of the accident. I've probably only recovered maybe 2/3 of it, but it's enough to carry on. So I'm really happy about that. I'm actually very happy about every single thing that has come out of the experience. But again, as I said, I would not have chosen that experience for me. So obviously, it's an example of the universe taking care of my vision for Smart Start and making it possible for me to bring even more to the community than I could have before this happened. So for that, we have to be grateful. And I would like to thank all of my Smart Start members who contributed to my recovery and who encouraged me, particularly on the days when I did not think I could handle it another minute. Some of those people had been with me for over 10 years, 12 years, and sadly, we've lost 2 of them. One of them had a fall and passed away just before Christmas. And a year or so ago, our very first beneficiary of the Smart Start program also passed away. So the first product that I had created coming out of rehab, I dedicated to him. And there is a story about that on the sales page for Discover Your Genius. That was the first product that I had created subsequent to the accident. And since then, I've come up with, I don't know, I must have done 6 or 7 new ones in the past year. And we're excited about all of them, but they're extra special because it was a long way to get to this point. But enough about that. Let's just carry on. It's very sad. I will say it's very sad when you start to lose community members, especially people that have supported you from the very initial vision, and who have been there for your every webinar, your every talk, your everything. It's very hard to believe that they're not with us anymore. But we have many new SmartStart members as well, and I'm very happy to be working with them. And we have new clients that are in the executive support program, and they're having a wonderful success building their new businesses as well. So it's all good. It's all really good. And I am very fortunate. Oh, thank you, Janet. What a kind word to say. Yes, I'm very happy to be working with Janet. She's doing amazing things with her high-ticket sales programming, and it's lots of fun to work with her team. I wanted to say that when looping back to this stop, start, continue process that I was telling you about, it's something you should do with your team whenever you have a launch, when you're creating a new product or program or service, when you're trying out new processes. It's an opportunity for everyone to weigh in and have just to tell you about their experience. And that's how you get better. Most of the people whose businesses do not accelerate at the rate that they're hoping for don't get there as fast as they would like because they're not looking at the right things. They're doing lots of wonderful stuff. They're putting lots of marketing out there, but they're not taking that extra step when something is finished to take that step back and say, okay, what went really well with this? What should we stop doing or change completely? What worked so well that we should just keep doing more of it? And I see this happen over and over again, particularly with Facebook ads and with customer onboarding, and with the development of different marketing pieces. And even when you're looking at, how are you going to organize your files, and how are you going to deal with calls, and how are you going to do every little aspect that's part of the customer journey. So I am a big champion. All my members will tell you I'm always talking about the importance of the debrief, that something is not finished until there's been a debriefing, and all the lessons to be learned from that experience have been extracted, and all of the changes moving forward have been documented. I realize documentation is not one of those sexy things. A lot of people don't like to do it, but it is a vital part of a successful business. So you'll hear me talk about that further over time, not just because I'm a big champion of it, but because it is truly very important to your success. And some time needs to be dedicated to it, especially if you have big plans, because every little weakness in the systems and processes that you put in place for your business become magnified when you have more clients and more customers coming on board. And you work so hard to build a great reputation, and yet this lack of attention to detail that I see so often is the downfall of so many businesses. And particularly today, in today's day and age, we have a lot of people out there who are selling done-for-you services. And I can tell you that many of them don't seem to have a very good idea of what a done-for-you service actually is, or how much background work you need to do before you release the work that you've done for a client, how much testing there should be, what kind of documentation should be handed off. These things are not natural. They are things that need to be attended to on a conscious basis. There are ways to streamline the work and make it simpler, but it really and truly must be done. So at the risk of sounding, very boring and unsexy and all the rest of it, I do talk about that a lot in the community. And as many of the members who have taken this advice will tell you, their businesses are far better for it. And it hasn't been the most favorite task. It's nobody's favorite task, let's just face it. Marketing and creating products and programs is a lot more fun. But don't put those beautiful ideas that you've created at risk by not doing the foundational pieces, the strategy pieces, and the boring documentation pieces. I don't want to see your hard work be, I don't want to see it be damaged or not be as successful as it could be because you didn't want to spend the time or the money to get those other operational pieces in place. I've talked a lot longer tonight than I did last week, and I hope you'll forgive me for that. I did want to say one last thing though, and that is that you can learn a lot about business, not just by working with advisors like myself or your business coaches or trainers or purveyors of programs that you've purchased, but you can also learn from others outside. Right now, for example, we have the Olympics happening. And you'll notice that a lot of the Olympians are quite young. I actually have a number of gold medal Olympians who are clients of mine. I love working with Olympians because they understand discipline, they understand work ethic, they understand how to come back from goals that were not achieved the first time out. They're amazing young people, and also generally after they've had a couple of gold medals, they start thinking about their futures, and many of them build businesses after to leverage something to do with their careers. And so I've had great opportunities to work with them on that, and I actually sometimes they'll bring the gold medals back to me, and I've never seen one, of course, in my life. So the first one I saw came from Barcelona, and that client, he had won it in the hurdles. And I was surprised by the medal. It's actually quite heavy, and I did not realize that the medal changes every year. The only thing that they have in common is there's always gold, silver, and bronze, but every medal has a different band and a different image on it. So that was pretty fascinating. And of course, they tell me all of the inside scoop on how the Olympics really work and blah, blah, blah. And I just love learning how things work. That's always been one of my favorite things. But Olympians can teach you a lot. And I encourage you to watch the Olympics on television if you have access to that now, and think about how many sacrifices these people have made to achieve their goals, and they were willing to put that work in. So if you want to achieve your big goals too, you have to understand there's a lot of work involved, and it can take time and a lot of disappointments along the way to get to where you're going. But as long as you do not let go of your vision, and you make sure that everything you're doing aligns with the direction in which you want to go, then you will be far better off than your average person. Another place that you can go to learn some fabulous lessons about business is to the movies. So earlier this week, I went to the movies and I saw Molly's Gang. Molly is a tremendous entrepreneur, and I would like to encourage my Smart Start community members to go and see that movie. There are a lot of business lessons to be learned from it. Very, very important one at the near the end of the movie, and it has nothing to do with the court case or charges brought up against her. It's something that she says, and I wish I could have it tattooed on every business owner that I meet and every person who walks through the doors of the Smart Start community, because it is the most important business lesson that you will ever learn. So that's your assignment for this week. Go and watch the movie Molly's Game, or read the book if you prefer to read the book, and look for that lesson. I was also very thrilled that Aaron Sorkin wrote the script for that film. Of course, he's one of my favorite authors. He's a very talented man, and I have a lot of authors in Smart Start for sure. I really love Aaron's work, and he was one of many dozen of people who had approached Molly to do a movie of her story, and she turned everybody down. But Aaron pitched her something very different from the angles all of the others were pitching, and that's how he won her over. So that's another fascinating business story. But in any event, I want you to go and see the movie. It was a great movie. It's a long movie, 2 hours and 20 minutes, but there are many, many great business lessons in it for you. And I'd be delighted to have you write to me and tell me what was that most major business lesson that came up near the end of the film that I want every business owner to understand. Alrighty then. So I'm going to wind up for this week. It's been a slice. I had a great time this evening speaking with you, and I really appreciate everyone who has popped into the feed to say hi and listen to what I had to say. And I just want to remind you that I hope that the worst of your future will be based on the best. Oh no, I got that wrong. Okay, let me think about this. I closed with it last week. May the best of your past be the worst of your future. That's what it was. Alrighty then. I'll see you next Sunday at 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Cheers, everybody.